Thank you. Good morning. Yeah, thank you. Morning, everyone. Nice to see you. Did everybody rest well last night? Good? Awesome. Well, thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about rest this morning. Not to put anybody to sleep, but just to think about, talk about, and reflect on the importance of it. In 1999, when I was in my second parish up in Danvers, Maureen, who's taking these pictures, that's where we first met. I got there in 97. A friend of mine who used to be a nun working in and around the killing fields in Cambodia, who saw it all as a nurse, as a woman religious. She gave me this book, and it was entitled Sabbath. And it wasn't a really sexy title, so I really wasn't interested. And I'm like, Sabbath? You know, that's not appealing, you know. And then I read it. I read it in 1999. It has been probably one of the most life-changing books that I've ever read. And I don't usually see movies over and over again or read books over and over again, but this one I have. And I thought I lost my original copy until recently. I was cleaning out these boxes. You know how Jesus said, take nothing for the journey? I misunderstood. I thought he said, take everything for the journey. And I just keep accumulating and all this kind of stuff. And I went through this box and I found the original copy that I had underlined. Now, 1999. That was in another century. Doesn't that sound funny to say that, though? What's that, 20? Yeah, that was... Thank you, English major. Thank you for all you... What has changed in 25 years? Technology. I mean, some of the examples that he uses that were, you know, fax machines and all the... Like, what? Right? What? These phones weren't even invented at that point. Gandhi in the 30s, without the technology that we have today, or even in 1999, said something like this: there is more to life than just increasing its speed. That was in the 30s, when many or most of us weren't around, right? And you think, oh, life is slower then and whatever. Or Thoreau would go off into the woods. Or Jesus would go off into the mountains and into the desert to rest, to restore. This book, Wayne Muller says, I feel like we forgot to keep holy the Sabbath. Was he meaning that literally, like we're not going to church every Sunday? I think he was saying we've forgotten about the sacred rhythms of rest in our lives. That there's a reason why it's in the top 10, keep holy the Sabbath. We have to rest. That's why I asked, first question, did you get some rest last night? Did you have a good sleep? Maybe this weekend, even with trains, planes, and automobiles, and getting here and going, and traveling next month, all the different things that are going on, maybe this weekend is a sort of a Sabbath. Not necessarily lying in a hammock, in a bucolic setting, in between the trees and over the lake shore, hearing the water lap, but it's a Sabbath, stepping back from the normal routines that we have, coming together as a community in this kind of unique way, beautiful way, and paying attention to some of the things that are going on within us, even as we keep our frenetic and frantic paces. But it's only when we slow down that things start to come up and we're like, oh yeah, that is there, you know? So I wanted to talk a little bit about that and see where it lands with you. I'm speaking to myself, so I'm also watching to see where it lands with me. And it's for all of us, no matter what age we are, where we're at, in life? Paying attention to the sacred rhythms of rest. Wayne Muller says, Sabbath is about remembering. And I like that word. Like I get on these kicks every once in a while, like the word disease. And when I talk with my friends who are really active and work in the program 12-step, and I'll read some of these books, you take the word disease and you pull it apart, and it's what? Somebody who is not at ease with oneself. And so there'll be a spiritual dis-ease, right? And we don't always have the tools or know how to deal with that dis-ease. And so we try and eventually maybe hit that place, one would say a rock bottom, coming to one's senses, and then moving forward. The same thing with this word, Sabbath. It's a remembering. A what? Think about it. Do you ever feel like, not dissociated, but like scattered, going in a million different directions, a million different miles, a million, gazillion, trazillion different things whipping around in those neurons in our brains, our minds, our spirits? Sabbath helps us to take all of those things and what? Remember them. It helps us to remember where we came from. Remember God. God can get pushed off to the side, at least in my life. And I'm, as I jokingly but seriously say, in the what? Business. Right? We're all in the business, right? We all know, and we love God, and we wouldn't be here, but like God gets the bump sometimes, you know, and there's so much other stuff going on. God wants to be remembered, literally and figuratively. And I'm wondering if this weekend might not be a little bit of that. Sabbath is about remembering with ourselves, with our God, with each other, the members of this community, restoring and paying attention to the sacred rhythms of rest. I know this isn't a totally silent retreat weekend at a monastery with the Trappists, you know? But I'm hoping it's a different kind of a retreat weekend. You know, by the way, even the Trappists, when you go out to, Scott, we've talked years about going out to Spencer, right? It's an hour away where the Trappist monastery is, you know, and you know, they pray 6-7 times a day, and nobody's supposed to be talking and all this kind of stuff. You know. But they're not just sitting on their little cots in their cells, you know, having the beatific vision happen, you know. They're out there working the fields. They're making jams and jellies. They're making beer. They're sowing investments. They're writing. Everybody's busy, just like us. But then they step back and they take time to remember. Ding, the bell goes off. And that's, again, what we're doing this weekend. I think we're coming into this, quote-unquote, monastery into a transformed place, and I hope a transformative place. Here at St. C's this weekend, but also inside our own hearts, our own churches, cathedrals within. I hope that becomes transformed in all of us, self-included, and that we in turn become transformative. And I think the only way to do that is to reflect and take a little time to rest. The unreflected life isn't worth living, Socrates, right? All of this ancient wisdom plays itself out in the action of a weekend like this. When he wrote this book, Wayne Muller, I think he was out in New Mexico, Utah, I forget, someplace out there, and he was a minister. He started a food pantry and a soup kitchen. He was a therapist. He's married. I think he's got kids. He's an ordained pastor. He was on these boards. He started, superhuman in all the right ways and doing all the right stuff. And he got sick. And I remember when I read that, I didn't want to read the book anymore because, you know, you think you're invincible, right? And we all do until we push and push and push. But he got so sick that they had to put him in one of those hyperbaric chambers or something like that because he was so exhausted, it was some sort of a pneumonia, that even thinking, even a thought, exhausted him. And again, 25 years ago, I'm kind of like, what? How does that happen? And again, my friend, she said, you better watch out. And others have said that. I don't know if anybody's ever said that to you. There's one of the Old Testament stories that says, get up and eat the hearth cake, or else the journey will be too much for you. Is that Elijah or Elisha? You know. We have to be nourished, and I think Sabbath allows us to be nourished. He tells the story from his own experience, emerging from that hyperbaric chamber and literally being on death's door, exhausted by a thought. And he tells the story of a South American tribe that went on a long march. Day after day, this tribe was marching. And all of a sudden, they'd stop walking. They'd sit down and rest for a while. And then, even with so much farther to go, they'd make camp for a couple of days before even going any farther. They explained that they needed the time of rest so that their souls could catch up with them. We've heard this maybe before. There's an ancient, timeless wisdom to it. Letting our souls catch up with our bodies. I don't do it well. Many of us don't do it well. But maybe this weekend is a little bit of an attempt to do that well, even with all the busyness and business of the weekend, because there's lots going on. I just want to read a couple of little excerpts, maybe throw out a few questions and back and forth, and then leave us with three things, all right? You know the term Lectio Divina? Yeah. So this is a small l, small d, all right? So just kind of let the stuff land where it lands with you. Maybe something will speak to you, maybe something won't. But see what lands, and let's see where it goes. Sabbath time, coming to Boston, our second annual retreat. Sabbath time can be a revolutionary challenge to the violence of overwork. Who would ever put those words together? The older I'm getting, man, they resonate. We do violence to ourselves in unknown ways on so many levels. Sabbath time is a revolutionary challenge to the violence of overwork, mindless accumulation, and the endless multiplication of desires, responsibilities, and accomplishments. Sabbath is a way of being in time where we remember who we are, what we know, and we begin to taste the gifts of spirit and eternity. Just even in a time like this. Sabbath, he says, creates a marker for ourselves so that if we're lost, we can always, what? Remember and find our way back to our center. What brings you peace? What brings me peace? Sometimes it's a literal place that we have to go. Sometimes even in the midst of everything, you just step back, breathe, pray, let your mind rest. Those are those markers that help us to find our way with everything that's pulling at us. Remember the Sabbath, not simply a lifestyle suggestion or one of the top 10 rules, but it's a deep spiritual precept in almost all of the world's spiritual traditions. Not just Christianity, not just Judaism. He says Sabbath honors the necessary wisdom of dormancy. We don't like dormancy. Remember back in the day when, it's spring, and fresh asparagus would be there? Or peas, or what were those ferns that are all curled up before they open up? Fiddleheads, right? My mother would be like, what? Now you can get anything, any time of year, right? You go to Whole Foods, and it's coming from Ecuador, it's coming from Chile, it's coming from, and everything's being brought in, and we have it, and we get used to it, we think that's normal. The fields aren't fallow. And when the fields aren't fallow, the nutrients aren't there, they're not replanted. That's all nature. They don't produce. No different with us, right? I talk a much better game than I farm. Let me tell you right now, huh? Sabbath honors the necessary wisdom of dormancy. And a lack of dormancy, he says, produces confusion and erosion in the life force. Taking days off. I still have this connotation that vacation is indulgent, overly indulgent, taking a nap, even just a quiet, like it's bad. I don't even know where that came from, but it's like it's ingrained. Is that in anybody else? Pay attention to it. I don't know if that's a voice from God. I think the voice from God is saying, keep holy the Sabbath. Pay attention to the rhythms that you need in your life that I need in mine. We too, he says, must have a period in which we lie fallow and we restore our souls, whatever that might look like. It's the time of sacred rest. Sabbath is more than the absence of work, too. Not just a day off, catching up on TV or errands, but it's the presence of something that arises when we consecrate a period of time, like this weekend, to listen to what's most deeply beautiful, nourishing, and true. Maybe in others, maybe in ourselves. While many of us are terribly weary just from life, well, the back starts going, the mind starts going, the heart, all the things that just come with aging. We've come to associate tremendous guilt and shame with taking time to rest. Where does that come from? Sabbath gives us permission. We only need to remember and remember. A couple more. This is okay, like I'm sowing these seeds and just seeing what lands where. Wayne says, when the Mass begins in a cathedral, the space is transformed the instant the first prayer is offered. The space isn't any different, but in that moment, it becomes transformed. Like us here, the space is the same with whatever's going on. But right now, it's transformed. There's something happening. There's something that's going to happen in a few minutes in these back rooms. We're going to be propelled into helping and serving from all these talks that we have, people who are going to motivate us. Huh? But right now, this space is transformed. It's reflective. We're thinking about things. And during Sabbath, the Jewish people, by keeping sacred rest, by keeping the Sabbath holy, maintained their own spiritual ground wherever they were, even when they were in exile. It was not Israel that kept the Sabbath, but the Sabbath that kept Israel. It's the Sabbath that holds us and keeps us when we pay attention to those rhythms of rest. Jesus offered his own beautiful practice to the disciples. And as I say all the time, we are the modern day disciples. What does he say? Make your home in me as I make mine in you. I am with you always. The last thing I'll say, and then get a little insight, and then we can have a few thoughts to go with. Our work is only fruitful when we're quiet enough to hear the miraculous resilience and strength that's present in those around us, in ourselves, and in those who suffer. It's only then that we can see the light in the darkness. And it's only when we remember the Sabbath that we have that clarity to see these things in ourselves and in others. So why wouldn't we take the time? Where are you tired? Where am I tired? Fatigued? A little burnt, toasted, mentally, physically, emotionally. relationally. We're all managing relationships. Spiritually. Where are you and I tired in our thoughts or our responsibilities, in our worries? Where are we tired of too much Sabbath? Where are we tired of feeling we have to earn God's love? So here's the question. Where do you and I need to go? Where do we need to go? Deeper. Inside. More quietly, to be renewed and refreshed. Where do we need to go to be remembered with ourselves? 2. What might work for you and me this weekend, or going back home in a few days, or in this next month, that might slow us down so that our souls can catch up with us? Or if our souls have caught up with us, where might we be propelled to go forward? And then lastly, let's spend a little time with these words from Jesus that we heard earlier. Make your home in me as I make mine in you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.